She didn't know that giving away bread that morning would cost her her job and change her life. Emma Carter's alarm went off at 4:15 a.m., just like it had every morning for 3 years. She rolled out of bed, checked on Lucy sleeping in the next room, and headed to the bakery 6 blocks away. The routine never changed. Unlock the door, turn on the ovens, mix the dough, wait for the bread to rise while the city slept. But there was one part of Emma's routine that wasn't on any schedule. Every morning at 5:15, old Tom Walker appeared at the back door. He never asked, never begged, just stood there quietly, rain or shine, waiting. And every morning Emma gave him whatever was left from yesterday. Sometimes it was a loaf of bread, sometimes pastries that didn't sell, sometimes just a cup of coffee and a muffin. Morning. "Tom," Emma said that Tuesday, handing him a paper bag. He took it with both hands, the way someone holds something precious. "Thank you, Emma." "Don't thank me. Just eat before it gets cold." He smiled. Tom had a way of smiling that made people feel like he could see right through them. Not in a creepy way, in a way that made them want to be better than they were. "You know," he said, "there's an old saying. If you have 2 spoons of rice, share 1. I've heard that. But most people haven't. He looked at her with those sharp gray eyes. Most people forget who they are when no one's watching. Emma didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Tom left and she went back inside to prep for opening. That's when she noticed it. A black sedan parked across the street, tinted windows, engine running. It was there yesterday, too, and the day before. Emma, Sarah, her co-worker, appeared in the doorway, looking worried. "You know they're watching now, right?" "Who's watching?" "Grand Oak Industries, the building management company. They own this whole block." Sarah lowered her voice. "They installed new security cameras last week, pointed right at the alley where you feed that homeless guy." Emma's stomach dropped. "So?" "So they have rules about loitering and unauthorized charity activities. It's in the lease. Emma, you could lose this place." "For feeding someone?" "For breaking policy." Sarah touched her arm. "I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying be careful." Emma looked out at the black sedan. Someone was watching, and she had no idea why. That afternoon, Emma's phone rang. "Emma?" Lucy's voice was small, scared. "I don't feel good." Lucy was 16. She'd been living with Emma since their parents died 2 years ago. She was Emma's entire world. "What's wrong, honey?" "My chest hurts, and I can't stop shaking. I'm coming home right now." Emma left Sarah in charge and ran the 6 blocks to their apartment. Lucy was on the couch, pale and sweating. Emma pressed her hand to Lucy's forehead, burning up. "We're going to the clinic," Emma said. "We can't afford—" "I don't care. Come on." The clinic waiting room was packed. They sat for 2 hours before a doctor finally called Lucy's name. 30 minutes later, the doctor emerged with a tight expression. "Your sister has pneumonia. She needs antibiotics immediately. And we need to monitor her for the next 48 hours. "Okay. What do I need to sign?" "The treatment and monitoring will cost approximately $4,000. Do you have insurance?" The number hit Emma like a punch. "No," she whispered. "I'm still in the waiting period at my new policy. Can we set up a payment plan?" "We require 50% down." $2,000. Emma had maybe $300 in her account. I'll figure it out, she said, her voice shaking. Just please help her. The doctor nodded and disappeared. Emma sat beside Lucy, holding her hand, trying not to cry. It's okay, Lucy whispered. We'll be okay. Emma didn't believe her, but she smiled anyway. The next morning, Emma was 20 minutes late opening the bakery. Tom was still waiting at the back door. I'm so sorry, Emma said, fumbling with her keys. My sister's sick and Is she all right? Tom's voice was sharp with concern. She will be. I hope. She stopped. Why was she telling him this? I'm sorry, that's not your problem. Everything human is my problem. He paused. Can I ask you something, Emma? Sure. If the truth costs you everything, would you still tell it? Emma stared at him. I don't understand. You will. He took the bread she handed him. Soon. Then he walked away, leaving Emma standing there with a question she couldn't answer. That afternoon, HR called. Miss Carter, we need you to come to the Grand Oak Industries main office. Today, 4 p.m. Why? We'll discuss it when you arrive. They hung up before Emma could ask more questions. Sarah covered her shift, and Emma took the bus downtown to the massive glass tower that housed Grand Oak Industries. The lobby was all marble and chrome, expensive, cold. A receptionist directed her to the 14th floor. The elevator ride felt like falling. When the doors opened, a woman in a sharp suit was waiting. Emma Carter? Yes. I'm Sandra Morrison, VP of Operations. Follow me. Sandra led Emma down a hallway lined with glass-walled conference rooms. Executives moved like sharks inside them. They stopped at a door marked Human Resources. Inside, 3 people sat at a table. Sandra, a man with cold eyes named Mark Thompson, and a younger woman named Chloe who looked uncomfortable. Sit down, Miss Carter, Sandra said. Emma sat. We've received reports that you've been engaging in unauthorized charitable activities on company property. I run a bakery. Sometimes I give food to people who need it. To a specific individual, repeatedly. At the same time, every day. Sandra slid a folder across the table. We have security footage. Emma opened it. Photos of her handing Tom bread, coffee, pastries. I don't understand. What's wrong with... We also have reports that this individual has been seen loitering near Grand Oak properties, following our employees, acting suspiciously. Tom wouldn't... How do you know? Mark Thompson leaned forward. How well do you actually know this man? Well enough to know he's hungry and I have food. And how much is he paying you? Emma blinked. What? For access. For information. For whatever arrangement you two have. Sandra's voice was ice. We know someone's been leaking company schedules, property values, executive movements, and suddenly this homeless man appears right when those leaks started. That's insane. Tom is just... Tell us who's paying you and we'll make this easier. No one is paying me, Emma's voice cracked. I'm feeding someone because it's the right thing to do. Then prove it, Chloe said quietly. Let us search your apartment, your accounts, your phone. No. Then you're fired. The words hung in the air. You can't fire me for violating company policy, for unauthorized activities on company property, for failure to cooperate with a security investigation. Sandra stood. Clean out your space by tomorrow. Security will escort you out. Emma stood on shaking legs. I haven't done anything wrong, Then you have nothing to hide, Mark said, but you're hiding something. And we'll find out what. Emma left before she started crying. If this story already has you hooked, make sure you subscribe, because this is just the first crack in the system. He didn't know her name yet, but he knew everything about her. 48 floors above where Emma sat crying in a bathroom stall, Will Walker stood in his corner office and hated himself. He'd watched the entire HR meeting on the security feed, watched Emma's face crumble when Sandra threatened her, watched her refuse to lie even when it would have been easier, and he'd done nothing to stop it. "She's clean, isn't she?" Will said quietly. Sandra stood beside him, arms crossed. "Probably. But she's also a liability." "How?" "Because people like her inspire disorder. They make employees question policy. They create exceptions. Before you know it, everyone wants special treatment." "She's feeding a homeless man." "She's violating lease agreements, property regulations, creating precedents we can't afford." Sandra looked at him. "You said you wanted Grand Oak to be efficient, profitable. That means no exceptions." Will looked down at the street 48 floors below. He could see the bakery from here, could see the alley where Emma fed old Tom every morning. His grandfather had taught him that kindness was a weakness. That sentiment destroyed empires. That a CEO who cared about individual suffering would lose everything to competitors who didn't. Thomas Walker Sr. had built Grand Oak Industries from nothing, had made it the most profitable real estate company in the state, and then he'd disappeared 5 years ago, leaving everything to Will with one instruction: don't let them make you soft. Will had followed that advice, made the company even more profitable, even more feared, and now he was watching a baker lose her job for feeding a homeless man, and something inside him was breaking. "Run a full background check," he said, "on both of them." Already did. Emma Carter, age 28, runs a small bakery, raising her teenage sister, no criminal record, no debts beyond medical bills, clean as they come. And the homeless man? That's where it gets interesting. Sandra pulled out another file. Tom Walker. No address, no income, no identification we can verify. But here's the thing. He's been seen outside 6 different Grand Oak properties in the last month. Will's head snapped up. Walker? Common name. Probably a coincidence. But Will's grandfather's name had been Thomas Walker. And he'd vanished 5 years ago without a trace. No, it couldn't be. So either it's a coincidence or someone's using him to scout our locations, Sandra continued. Real estate espionage isn't uncommon, Will. And if he's working for a competitor, then we'll find proof. Real proof. Not speculation. Will turned from the window. Until then, leave Emma Carter alone. She's already fired. Undo it. Sandra's eyes narrowed. Why? Because kindness isn't a crime, and we're not in the business of punishing people for being decent. Since when? Since he'd watched Emma choose honesty over survival, Will thought. Since he'd seen something in her face that reminded him of who he used to be before his grandfather disappeared and left him this empire. Since now, Will said, reinstate her. Tell her it was a misunderstanding. The board won't like this. The board works for me. Sandra studied him for a long moment. You're making a mistake, she said finally. Then it's mine to make. She left. Will stood alone in his office, looking down at a city that felt colder every day. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Kindness is expensive. Someone always pays for it. Make sure you know the price before you defend her. Will stared at the message. Then, he made a call. This is Will Walker. I need private surveillance on Emma Carter. 24 hours. I want to know everything about her. And find out who Tom Walker really is. He hung up and looked back out the window. If his grandfather was alive and testing him somehow, Will needed to know. And if Emma Carter was part of some elaborate scheme, he needed proof. But as he watched her small figure exit the building far below, shoulders slumped in defeat, Will felt something he hadn't felt in years. Doubt. Things are about to get uncomfortable. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. The call from the clinic came the same day HR destroyed her. Emma was still shaking when her phone rang. Miss Carter, this is Dr. Patel from the clinic. I wanted to give you an update on your sister. Emma's heart stopped. Is she okay? She's stable, responding well to treatment. But I'm calling because something unusual happened. What? Your bill was paid, in full, by an anonymous donor. Emma couldn't breathe. What? $4,000. Transferred this morning. We don't know who, but they specified it should cover all of Lucy's treatment and monitoring. I don't understand. Neither do we. But your sister is taken care of. You can pick her up tomorrow morning. Emma hung up and immediately tried calling Tom. The number he'd given her for emergencies went straight to voicemail. Tom, if you did this, I can't accept it. I don't know how you got that money, but please, I need to know you're okay. Call me back. He didn't. The next morning, Emma returned to the bakery expecting security to escort her out. Instead, Sarah met her at the door with a confused expression. They called, Sarah said. HR. They said there was a misunderstanding. That you're not fired. What? I don't know. But they sounded scared, like someone higher up overruled them. Emma stood there, trying to process. She still had her job. Lucy's medical bills were paid. Nothing made sense. Emma, Sarah grabbed her arm. That homeless guy, Tom, he was here this morning. He said to tell you something. What? He said, truth walks slowly, but it reaches home. What does that mean? Emma had no idea, but she was about to find out. That afternoon, Will Walker walked into Emma's bakery. She was behind the counter, boxing up cupcakes for a customer, when the door chimed. Emma looked up and froze. Will Walker, CEO of Grand Oak Industries. The man whose company had tried to destroy her yesterday. He was tall, sharp suit, gray eyes that looked exactly like Tom's. Miss Carter, Will said. We need to talk. The customer grabbed their cupcakes and fled. Emma and Will stood on opposite sides of the counter. You reinstated me, Emma said. I did. Why? Because firing you was wrong. Your VP didn't think so. My VP doesn't make the final decisions. I do. Will looked around the small bakery, clean but worn, loved but struggling. Can we sit? I'm working. Please. Something in his voice made Emma gesture to a small table by the window. They sat. I've been watching you, Will said. Not in a creepy way, in a curious way. You feed a homeless man every morning, you don't ask for anything in return, you don't post about it on social media, you just do it. So? So that's rare. In my world, people don't do things without expecting something back. Maybe you're in the wrong world. Will almost smiled. Maybe I am. Why are you really here, Mr. Walker? Because I need to understand something. That homeless man, Tom Walker. Who is he to you? Emma's eyes narrowed. Why do you care? Because he has the same last name as me, and my grandfather disappeared 5 years ago without a trace. The words hung between them. You think Tom is your grandfather? I think it's possible. And if he is, I need to know why he's living on the streets. Why is he watching my company? Why him? Will stopped. Why is he testing me? Testing you? My grandfather believed kindness was weakness, that caring about people made you vulnerable. He built the Grand Oak on that principle. Will met her eyes, and I followed his example. Until I watched you choose honesty over survival yesterday, and I realized I don't know who I am anymore. Emma stared at him. Tom paid my sister's medical bills, she said quietly. $4,000. Anonymously. Will's eyes widened. Are you sure? Who else would it be? I don't know. But if it was him, Will pulled out his phone. How does a homeless man get $4,000? Maybe he's not homeless. Then what is he? They looked at each other, both realizing the same thing. Tom Walker was testing them both. I need to find him, Will said, standing. I need to know the truth. Then I'm coming with you. Why? Because he asked me a question I couldn't answer. And I think you're part of the answer. Will studied her face. This woman who'd lost her job, nearly lost her sister, and still refused to lie or compromise. Okay, he said. Let's find Tom Walker. If you've ever been punished for doing the right thing, hit subscribe. You'll want to hear how this ends. They looked for him everywhere, but he found them first. Will and Emma spent the next 3 days searching for Tom. They checked shelters, soup kitchens, the alleys where homeless populations gathered. They showed his photo to social workers and police officers, and anyone who might have seen him. Nothing. It was like Tom Walker had vanished. This doesn't make sense, Will said on the third night. They were sitting in his car outside Emma's apartment. If he's my grandfather, he has resources, accounts, properties. Why would he just disappear? Maybe that's the point, Emma said. Maybe he wanted to see what happened when he wasn't there, what you'd become without him. And what did I become? Emma looked at him, really looked. In the past 3 days, she'd seen Will change, soften. The cold CEO who'd approved her termination had become someone who asked questions instead of giving orders. I think you're figuring that out, she said. Will's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Hello? William. The voice was old, familiar. Stop looking for me. I'm not lost. Grandfather? Meet me tomorrow. Grand Oak headquarters, noon. Bring Emma Carter. How do you know? I know everything. I've been watching you both, and it's time we had a conversation about what strength really means. The line went dead. Will stared at his phone. That was him, he whispered. He's alive. What did he say? He wants to meet. Tomorrow. At my office. Will looked at Emma. He asked for you specifically. Emma's stomach twisted. Why? I don't know. But I think we're about to find out. Oh. The next day, Emma and Will rode the elevator to the 48th floor in silence. Emma wore her best dress. Will wore his usual suit. Both of them were terrified. The elevator doors opened. Thomas Walker Sr. stood in the hallway. Not Tom, the homeless man. Not anymore. He wore an expensive suit. His hair was trimmed. His beard was gone. He looked like exactly what he was, the founder of a billion-dollar empire. "Hello, William," Thomas said. "Grandfather." Will's voice was tight. "You've been alive this whole time." "Yes." "You let me think you were dead." "I let you think I was gone." "There's a difference." "Why?" Thomas looked at Emma. "Because of people like her?" Emma stepped back. "I don't understand. 5 years ago, I realized my company had become something I didn't recognize. Cold, ruthless, efficient, but cruel. So I left. Gave everything to my grandson. And I became nobody to see what would happen. You became homeless, Will said. You lived on the streets. I lived with truth. I saw how people treat those with nothing. How companies like mine destroy communities to maximize profit. How easy it is to forget that numbers on a spreadsheet are people's lives. Thomas walked closer. And then I met Emma. "Why me?" Emma whispered. "Because you fed me without expecting anything. You treated me with dignity when I had nothing to offer. You chose kindness even when it cost you." Thomas turned to Will. "And you, grandson, you spent 5 years building exactly what I taught you to build. A machine that eats people and calls it progress." Will flinched. "But then something changed," Thomas continued. "You watched Emma refuse to lie. I watched her choose truth over survival. And you made a choice I never thought you'd make. You defended her. I couldn't let them destroy her for being decent. Why not? I would have." The words landed like a blow. "I know," Will said, quietly. "And that's the problem. You taught me that caring was a weakness, that empathy destroyed profit, that people were resources to be managed, not humans to be valued. And now? Now I don't know if I can be the person you wanted me to be." Thomas smiled. It was sad and proud at the same time. "Good," he said. "Because I was wrong. This is where everything flips. Subscribe now because the next scene changes the entire story. They thought she'd stay quiet. They were wrong." Thomas Walker Sr. called an emergency town hall meeting. Every Grand Oak employee was required to attend. Every executive, every board member. The massive conference room on the ground floor was packed. Emma stood at the back, trying to be invisible. Will stood at the front beside his grandfather, looking like a man walking to his own execution. Sandra Morrison sat in the front row, her face carefully neutral. "Thank you all for coming," Thomas began. His voice carried authority that 5 years of absence hadn't diminished. "I'm Thomas Walker. Some of you know me as the founder of this company. Some of you thought I was dead. I'm neither." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. 5 years ago, I left because I realized I'd built something monstrous. A company that valued profit over people, efficiency over empathy, control over compassion. And I wanted to see if it could survive without me. He paused. It did. Under my grandson's leadership, Grand Oak became even more profitable, even more powerful, even more feared. Will's jaw clenched. But something else happened, Thomas continued. A baker started feeding a homeless man. Just simple kindness, no agenda, no expectation. And when my grandson's company tried to punish her for it, something remarkable occurred. Thomas pulled out a folder, projected images on the screen behind him. These are emails from Sandra Morrison, Mark Thompson, and Chloe Reed. Emails discussing how to frame Emma Carter for corporate espionage, how to destroy her reputation, how to make sure her kindness looked like a crime. The room went silent. Sandra stood. That's taken out of context? Is it? Thomas clicked to another slide. This is an email from Mark Thompson to a private investigator asking him to plant evidence in Miss Carter's apartment. This one is from Sandra, authorizing payment for fabricated witness testimony. Emma's hands shook. You tried to destroy an innocent woman, Thomas said, his voice cold as ice, because she made you look bad by comparison. We were protecting the company, Sandra shot back. That homeless man was suspicious. He was watching our properties, following our employees. We had reason to believe... You had reason to believe I was testing you, Thomas interrupted. And you failed. He turned to the crowd. I spent 5 years watching this company from the streets, watching how you treated people with nothing, how you fired employees without cause, how you evicted families to maximize property values, how you chose profit over humanity at every turn. Thomas walked to the center of the room. And then I met Emma Carter, and she fed me. Not because she wanted something, not because she expected gratitude, but because it was the right thing to do. He looked at Will. And my grandson, who I trained to be ruthless, made a choice. He defended her, reinstated her, questioned the system I built, and in doing so, he became something I never taught him to be. What? Will asked quietly. Better than me. The room erupted in whispers. Effective immediately, Thomas announced. I'm resuming control of Grand Oak Industries as chairman of the board. William Walker will remain as CEO, but with full autonomy to reform company policies. Sandra Morrison, Mark Thompson, and Chloe Reed are terminated for ethics violations and attempted fraud. You can't, Sandra started. I can. I'm the majority shareholder. I built this company, and I'm rebuilding it now. Thomas looked at Emma. Miss Carter, would you please come to the front? Emma's legs felt like water. She walked through the silent crowd to stand beside Thomas and Will. This woman, Thomas said, represents everything this company should be. Honest, kind, willing to sacrifice for others, and we tried to destroy her for it. He turned to Emma. I'm establishing the Walker Foundation for Community Support. Its mission will be to provide food security, medical assistance, and housing support to vulnerable populations. And I'd like you to lead it. Emma stared at him. What? You've been managing complexity with no resources for years. Imagine what you could do with real support. Thomas smiled. You don't have to accept, but the offer stands. I need to think about it. Of course. Thomas turned back to the crowd. Grand Oak Industries will be changing. We will be transparent. We will be ethical. We will value people over profit. And if you can't accept that, you're welcome to leave. Half the executives stood and walked out. Thomas watched them go. Good, he said. Now we can start rebuilding. If you love stories where truth wins, subscribe now, because we're not done yet. Power didn't save her. Love didn't rescue her. Truth did. 3 months later, Emma stood outside her bakery at 5:15 a.m. The morning was cold. Rain threatened. But she wasn't alone anymore. Will Walker stood beside her, holding 2 cups of coffee and a bag of pastries. "You know you don't have to do this," Emma said. "I know, but I want to." They waited together until a young woman appeared at the back door, thin, scared, obviously hungry. Emma handed her the bag and a coffee. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "Don't thank me. Just eat before it gets cold." The woman left. Will looked at Emma. "Do you miss it? Running the bakery?" "Sometimes. But the foundation reaches more people. Lucy's healthy now, and I get to make real change instead of just surviving." "You were always making real change. You just have more resources now." Emma smiled. "Says the CEO who reformed an entire corporation. I had good inspiration." They stood in comfortable silence. Over the past 3 months, Grand Oak Industries had transformed. New policies protecting workers, transparent accounting, community investment programs. Half the old guard had left. The stock price had dropped initially, then recovered as ethical investors took notice. Will had been terrified through all of it. But Emma had been there, challenging him, supporting him, reminding him why they were doing this. "Can I ask you something?" Will said. "Sure." "That night my grandfather asked if truth was worth losing everything. What would you have said?" Emma thought about it. "I would have said yes. Because everything built on lies eventually collapses anyway. At least truth gives you something solid to stand on when it all falls apart. Even if you're standing alone, you're never alone when you're standing in truth. The right people always find you." Will took her hand. "Like I found you?" "Like we found each other." They kissed in the rain, outside a bakery that stayed open, in a city that was slowly learning that kindness wasn't weakness. It was the only real strength there was. Thomas Walker watched from across the street, hidden in the shadows of the building he'd once owned. He'd given Will the company, given Emma the resources to change lives, given both of them the chance to build something better than what he'd created. Now, it was their turn. Thomas smiled, turned, and walked away into the morning rain. His test was over, and they'd both passed. 6 months later, Emma and Will stood at the front of a small church. Lucy was the maid of honor, healthy and smiling. Thomas Walker sat in the front row, tears in his eyes. "I didn't think I'd cry," he whispered to the person beside him. Sarah from the bakery laughed. "Everyone cries at weddings." The ceremony was simple. No extravagance, no spectacle. Just 2 people who'd learned that truth was more valuable than power, and kindness was more powerful than wealth. "Do you, William Walker, take Emma Carter to be your wife?" "I do." "And do you, Emma Carter, take William Walker to be your husband?" Emma looked at Will. At this man who'd been taught that caring was weakness and had chosen to be strong enough to care anyway. "I do." They kissed. The small crowd cheered. And somewhere in the city, a homeless man received a bag of pastries from the Walker Foundation with a note that read, "If you have 2 spoons of rice, share 1. And remember, you're seen, you matter. You're not alone." The man read it, smiled, and ate his breakfast, knowing that somewhere, someone cared. And that made all the difference. If this story moved you, subscribe. Stories like this remind us that kindness still wins, that truth still matters, that one act of compassion can change everything. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you're never too small to make a difference. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.